Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to do math differently. I'm going to review this math resource, a book titled Math Essentials 9, 2nd edition. So let me tell you a few sentences about the book itself and how the review is structured so you can follow along easily. This book is published by McGraw-Hill Ryerson and is not new, but there is no 3rd edition. Not especially new book. This was printed in 2011 there. That's just the library stamp there. And you can see the book's number and publisher's website. Book is printed and bound in Canada. You can see some of the authors and consultants and contributors here. And some more of them over here. So this is the book. This review is going to progress from the big picture to a smaller picture to zooming in on one particular skill this book is presenting it. And for this reason, I will contrast this book with another math book, Math Power 8, and see how the same skills are presented. Don't worry about the great difference, how the same skill is presented in a different book made by a different publisher and a different team of people. And over here I have a 3rd book titled Mathematics for Machine Technology, and is a book used by first-year apprentices in the trades training system. A first-year apprentice machinists use this book, so this is past grade 12, this would be grade 13 if there was one. So that's where this book is being used at that level, post-secondary. But don't worry about the grade difference, because I zoomed in and chose the same skills, how it's presented in these books, and especially in this one. This is the focus here. So, and I'm going to be upfront right away here. This book is so badly written on so many levels that it's thoroughly miserable. Okay, it makes learning miserable or very nearly impossible for a great many people, and let me explain why. So if you are at the moment in grade 8 going into grade 9 and considering taking Math Essentials 9 in a school where this book is used as a resource, don't run for the hills and don't look back. If you are in Math Essentials 9 already and you are in an environment that uses this book as its main resource, my condolences, I can't really help you. If you are a parent whose child is in a class that uses this book as a main resource, I can't really help you either as a parent. But if your child is struggling in class, because your child might be doing wonderfully well, but if the kid is struggling, it's probably not the kid's fault. It's everybody's problem, but this book is causing or making learning so much more difficult than it should. So it's just, it baffles me how bad this book is. All right, so let me explain how this works out. The purpose of this book and the purpose of Essentials math classes in general is to prepare people for the work world, okay, for employment. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's planned to be pragmatic, down to earth, practical, easy to understand math book. And this isn't one of those. This math book is a 2-in-1 combo that got not only these holes punched into it, or maybe the library did that, but this is a workbook where students can fill in some of their answers, and should also serve as a reference. So it should be somewhat of a textbook as well as a workbook, whereas the other books I have with me, you can see a bunch of practice problems on all kinds of pages, but there is no space whatsoever left in this book for students to fill in any kind of answer. So this book plans to be practical, where it can function as a 2-in-1, be a textbook, and you can work in it. So there is no need to carry unbound pages, you know, handouts and or a workbook that you would need with this one. So the book is also designed to be affordable. That's also why it's black and white and it's printed on cheap matte paper. It's only about $20, whereas this book over here is a treasured resource, and students need to check this out with their signatures. Yeah, I'm just going to go a little further away with it, so you can't actually read it. The students sign it out here in whatever school board or school district, and they use it. Don't write in the book, whatever. So this book was designed to be pragmatic and practical, but it isn't. It doesn't quite deliver. So let's get to it. Why? First off, the cover is printed in color. That's nice, but the inside pages are not. And although this two-tone gray separation makes it easy to track horizontally lines of information, so that's fine, and also you can see columns are separated visually, the two-tone black and white or two-tone grayscale is not really a fantastic resource for, you know, where are the definitions to study? Where is the actual instructional part of a text? Is it in the box? Not really, because it says warm up. Where is it? Manage money for a track meet. Where is the instruction? Where is the lesson? Where is the lesson on which where we can see a skill demonstrated and a sample calculation 1, 2, and 3, guided practice? Nothing. There is some text here, all right, but then questions start here. Question 1, and then it goes to the next page. Let's pick another spot. You can see the same stuff. Warm up in a textbook, and then exercise 1 right after warm up. Without there is really no teaching part in this book. There are no lessons or any kind of reference section on any of the pages. Whereas, say in this book, what is it? 100% of a number. There is an activity, there is something for the students to do, and there is visual separation of information, meaning, let's pick another page, meaning, there, this table is a lot easier to read because it's in color, and causing fatigue while you're reading is not really putting your efforts into learning. It's causing fatigue for your eyes. The visual separation of the pages of the instruction here, you can see that the red ones here mean to be negative ones. They are a lot easier to read than two-tone grayscale. Everywhere and anywhere there. The shapes, when it comes to geometry, it's easier to track and follow the outline of the shapes on the dot paper board. And in this book you can systematically and regularly find some instruction in this upper left hand corner, or something that resembles a lesson. Here there's a definition, it's bolded out, something perimeter. Okay, you get the idea. And there is here what are faces and what are edges, and on these three-dimensional polygons, and you can see it's a lot easier to comprehend the three-dimensional shapes when they are colored. Okay, so that's a first issue, or one of the issues here for with this book. Getting concepts through just is made so much harder in a black and white book where the illustrations are nothing more than cutesy. Like that guy doesn't really help comprehend the academic message that the book is trying to convey. Okay, the illustrations are not necessarily well chosen. This book here for apprenticeships, just briefly here, is also two-tone, but it's blue at least. So a little better. Is not stellar by any means, but it is a little better than two-tone gray. Okay, this is easier to look at fractions this way or percents this way. So another problem with this book is that if you actually look at the picture, what does this picture tell you? Spend time with your gang, with your homies. And are these people engaged in anything academic? No. They're having fun. They are engaged in fun. So the unspoken message here is not one of academic effort, is one of leisure or dare I say, rejection. BMX is not a mainline sport. Okay, we'll just go with that. As well as if you are already in an essentials class, you know that you're not smart enough to make it into the normal class, okay, to do pre-algebra. So you are just a suggested activity here is that you go and do something more age appropriate or brain appropriate. So I really don't like this suggested. I understand the authors are trying to be fun and engaging, but at the same time they are not. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to twist the point any further. As well as if you look at some of the lesson titles or unit titles like monster trucks, that's not really an academic approach to anything. Okay, that's a popularist statement trying to appeal to people who are further than reinforced into doing things that are nowhere near academic. That's nice, but that's also not preparing them for the workplace or the world or the work world. Okay, so what the book is trying to do is they're actually cutting the branch onto themselves, so to speak. As well as there is a strong gender bias in this book. I don't want to belabor the point too much, but are girls interested in BMX tricks? For sure some are, but most of them aren't. Or monster truck, like seriously, I mean, some of them do become mechanics and whatever, but this is not really the way to present skills or to engage people, okay? That's my honest personal opinion. You have a right to disagree. Let's look at the actual content of how stuff is presented in this book. And I picked here linear measurement imperial. So let's look at page, 67, and see how things unfold here in greater detail. Forget about nitpicking here with, there are females in this book after all. However, again, the illustration doesn't really relate to anything academic or anything technical, or isn't a mathematical illustration. All right, so let's see one of the questions here. Maybe this way you can read along with me here. Europe uses the metric system. The United States uses the imperial system. Which system should Canada use and why? Really? That's what you want to ask from a grade 9 kid to prepare an essay on a highly political question, which system should Canada use and why? And you have 3 lines for text, so it's not going to be a 20-page essay or a doctoral dissertation, but this question is a historical question, and I understand this was trying to highlight some of the differences and bringing awareness that we have metric and we also have imperial, but I don't think this is the best approach to do it. One other thing I also want to point out early on, that the book is not only somewhat nonsensical or arguably not really leading into the skill that it's trying to teach, linear measurement using inches and fractions of an inch, because my nitpicking here is with the word imperial. You see, the United States does not use the imperial system. The imperial system of measurement was used by the British Empire and the Commonwealth countries. The United States was never part of the Commonwealth or the British Empire for too long. So ever since they split at around 1790, they stopped using the British units, and any updates to measurement units remained unaffected in the United States. That's why the United States capacities are different from the imperial capacities, for example. So a US gallon is not the same as an imperial gallon, okay? I'll spare you the rest of the history here. The United States uses the customary system of measurement, not the imperial. So the text is really, doesn't really stand up to academic scrutiny, okay? Now, or clarity or accuracy. So let's look at some of these activities here on that page, this page here, and see how these unfold for warming up, for introducing fractions of an inch and everything. So this one here says introduction. Let me just reposition slightly here. Introduction to imperial measure, and this is warming up here. This is fill. That means crosshatch or color or shade. So that's again an arguable or a misleading, or how can you fill a container? It's a two-dimensional. You can't pour water into it. So lack of clarity. So fill the containers. All right. So how do you know if you filled it to 3/4 of its capacity? How can you tell if it's only 2/3? How do you know if how much can you be off? You can't, because the shapes don't come with marks where 1/4, 1/2, and the 3/4 would be. These rectangles do come with those marks. Here you can see that half of the shape, half of the rectangle is shaded, or 1/4 of the rectangle is shaded. Here it's obvious, but here it's a little lame and badly chosen. And then the next one, right after fractions, and this is a skill of writing and naming fractions. And right after that, let's count multiples of 12s. Over here, or something with money math, dollar, dollar, dollar. I see fractions in it in the text, but it's basically money math. Next thing we have here is multiples of 16. And next thing we're getting back to fractions again. How many quarters are in a half? This arrangement of skills is not really warming up. The 12 times table was never committed to memory in any of the previous 8 grades. Calculating multiples of numbers that factoring 16 was part of, but it doesn't really quite connect to they are all loosely related to the imperial system of measure, but we are either doing multiples or we're doing fractions. If you're trying to advance the pawns on both fronts a little bit, it's not the best thing to do. Look at the actual text here. This is a picture of a ruler. Actually, this one page, that's where some instruction is. This one page is that's supposed to be the lesson right after the warm-up. This is supposed to teach you how to read an inch-based ruler in inches and fractions of an inch. Okay, that's what you have here at the bottom. And it says most imperial rulers here, or measuring tapes, divide an inch into 16 parts, and this is where some of the fractions are located in this scale. It's fantastic, but if you want to teach these fractions and introduce these fractions, why does the page start with these things? The basic units of linear measure are inch, foot, yard, and mile. The imperial ruler is 1 foot long. There are how many inches in a foot? So this one requires that the student be listening to an instructor who actually tells you the answer, so the student can fill it in, because unless you're told that there are 12 inches in a foot, how would anybody know? There are 3 feet in 1 yard. So there must be how many inches in a yard? So far so good. Next sentence. There are 1,760 yards in a mile. Bracket, you rarely would need to know this. If you would rarely need to know this, why is it in the book? In a book for essentials, people stuck in an essentials class who were already downgraded and somewhat rejected. Why would they need to know something that they really don't need to know? Besides the point, the multiples of 12 and the multiple 36 inches in a yard, none of these numbers have anything to do with what fractions are on a tape measure. Now this doesn't say, the lesson title here doesn't say that this is a lesson about inches and fractions of an inch. This is one lesson about both multiples of inches, so inches, feet, and yards, as well as the fractions. It's not really working out for either one of those. There's not enough instructions to explain the multiples of 12 and then 3 feet make a yard, and there's not enough clarity and explanation here. Neither is there enough clarity. What fraction is located on that line there, that shorty, right there? Right, there is half there. What fraction is that? There's not enough instruction for the student. There is no reference material here that can be used as a memory jogger, that can be learned by the student. So that's how this book goes. It makes learning unnecessarily difficult. Okay, and any of the exercises, the subsequent exercises, are really bad and don't relate to the actual skill of measuring something. None. Okay, you're welcome to get it out from the library, but here. This is, which imperial unit would you use to measure? This is choosing a proper measurement unit. It's nice, I get it. It does relate to imperial measurements to some degree. It's really badly laid out. Here is another example. This is the last one out of this book. Here is some money math done with fractions. They're trying to relate fractions to multiplying fractions or imperial measures. Here you have all of a sudden thrown at you fraction multiplication. What's 5 times 1 1/4? With no memory jogger, no learning page or a learning section or a lesson or any kind of reference material. There, try to figure this one out. 4 foot 9 inches times 2. And then you're left with blanks. So this book needs to be supplemented by handwritten notes in classes or instructor handouts. So that defeats the purpose of this book to be practical, in a sense that now it needs to be supplemented with actual instruction. And this is not how fraction multiplication is presented in other books. Also, okay, one last thing. So there's not a lot of practice problems, none on actual fraction multiplication, and there's no answer key at the back, nothing. The book just ends. That's that. There's no answer key. So just for contrast, really briefly, let's look at this one, how the same fraction stuff is presented in this one. Here is fraction addition. There is story. There is a little more thinking stuff here to do. Here is an example. Example 1, example 2. Common fractions, mixed numbers. Here is one explained with pictures, explained with numbers, explained with words. One step, other step, next step, last step. This is actually a lesson or something a student can look at for reference. And the practice problems, there are lots of practice problems, 34 on this page, and you can see some are done with shapes, some are done with numbers, and then as it gets harder, and then word problems. You see, it's got a gradual difficulty or complexity increasing in it. Same for subtraction. Some story, something that relates to it, again highlighted, separated by colors, you know, the steps that you need to do to get your final answer. Also color separation, again, how fraction subtraction is done, and again practice. Numbers first, word problems later, maybe some challenge question at the end here. Okay, that's how it goes. This is an intermission there, and then multiplying fractions. So unlike in this book here, multiplying fractions is presented actually sensibly here. Here, example 1, example 2, common fractions, mixed number. One step, another step, third step, final step. That's how you get the answers. Here is another example, just in case. Here is the solution in great detail. And there you have it. Now you can follow the pattern and you can practice it using shapes, using easy numbers, using difficult numbers, using easy word problems, difficult word problems, maybe some challenge thrown in at the back. You see, this is how this stuff is presented. Now you might argue that, oh, this grade 8 is supposed to prepare this grade 9, and this information in grade 8 is supposed to be already known. Yeah, that's not how people work, and that's not how people learn without reminders and memory joggers. Just look at what the apprentices are given. We're almost done here. The apprentices there. Common fractions and mixed numbers, and what they get here is explaining parts and wholes and relating to them. Here, definition of fractions, fractions and equivalent fractions are practiced here, and mixed numbers, and lots of practice everywhere with actual shapes that maybe are not drawn to scale, but you can do stuff with it. Here again, adding common fractions. Here is a lesson part or learning section here, procedure, example 1, example 2, and a note. And then you find the practice problems at the end here, where you can, here is another example with a machine part, and then you can find enough practice problems. Here it says application, lowest denominators, whatever. Next section here, this one relates to adding fractions, this one relates to something mixed numbers. Okay, so this is how it goes. Next skill, subtraction. After that, of course, multiplication is the next one, and this is practices on subtraction. Here is multiplying fractions. Again, the learning part, examples, everything clearly laid out. So, and finally, we end up, of course, with actually reading a ruler, and here the actual fractions are placed into the book, where you can see the fractions, 1/64 of an inch, 1/32 of an inch. Yeah, they need a little more fractions than just eighths and quarters, then quarters and halves. So this book only had quarters and halves, and others were just on the tape. So this is what apprentices get. This is what apprentices actually learn from. This one is a far cry from it. Now, you might say these people don't need this level of detail, but they do need all the detail to do fraction operations, fraction multiplications, everything correctly enough. So, really bad book. Avoid. So this is what makes learning from this book especially difficult. There isn't enough lessons in it. And also the learner is going to think, when they look at this kind of fraction multiplication here, that, you know, I'm supposed to know this, because that's the first thing anybody would think in grade 9 or at any level. Oh, it's all of a sudden in the book. It's in the book because I'm supposed to know it already. Well, that's not how learning goes. So. And not only there's not enough lessons in it, 6 of these practice problems to practice multiplying 2 2 of them a fraction with a single digit whole number, and 4 of them a mixed number with a single digit whole number. That's not practice, you know. That's not nearly enough amount. Just by contrast, here in this book you have practices. I don't know, here is 38 practice problems of this. Here is another page, I don't know, 64th math problem here. Okay, that's a review page. You get the idea. 6 practice problems with a single digit whole number multiplying. That's not practice either. So this does not work neither as a textbook nor as a workbook. And if the publisher or the authors of the book argue that, oh, this is supposed to be supplemented by the teacher's notes and handouts, we're back to the issue of unbound pages and carrying unbound pages, and the student would need to toggle between 2 sources of information, and that's bad. In most normal books, stuff that belongs to a lesson is presented on the same page, so students purposefully don't need to turn away from the lesson and the topic and turn to anywhere else. Even these students. So it's unnecessary to make grade 9 people's lives harder. This book fails on so many levels, as either as a textbook and as a workbook, and takes the fun totally out of learning, even though it claims to instill some fun into learning. Well, it doesn't.